three words, which is just do it. Forcing yourself into that situation sometimes is the only way to do it. I'm an introverted person that has learned how to be less introverted over time. It's got to be the best place for food in the world, I think. I haven't been to every country in the world, and as far as I know, this is probably one of the best places. My name's John Shardlow. I am 53 years old. I'm married to a Malaysian from Sarawak, and I've got two kids. One stepson who's already working, he's 24 years old, and my daughter's nearly 8. She'll be 8 in a few days. I've been working in telecoms now for a very long time. It was telecoms that brought me to Malaysia in the first place, and that's what I'm still doing now. I've been in pre-sales roles for a very long time, kind of helping salespeople to sell things. We help with proof of concept projects and things like that, where we do things to convince customers that they want to buy our product. My current pre-sales role is kind of an interesting one because I get to do a lot more really techie stuff. You know, sometimes I actually write code, which is what I started my career doing. I'm originally from the UK. I was born in London and I've lived in a few different places in the UK. My original company that brought me over here had thought about Singapore, but then they decided to go for Malaysia in the end, which is a good thing, I think. And I've spent lots of time in other countries on business trips, loads of time in Singapore, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. I've been all over the region for work, but I've never actually moved to one of those other countries. I came to Malaysia in 2004 to set up an office, and I stayed here for 3 years on kind of secondment at that time. When that secondment finished, I went back to the UK for a while, but I didn't really settle in the UK again. So I decided to come back to Malaysia in 2009. And I've been here ever since. So that's about 12 years and 15 years if you add in the first time. So it's a good chunk of time. I mean, I've probably been in KL longer than most other places I've lived. I think London is the only other place I've lived for that long. If I look back, there's one particular thing that happened which probably led to everything else that happened. When I was in London working after university, I was in my second job. I didn't really like my second job very much for various reasons. And I decided I was going to stop work, take a break and go and travel. And it was going and traveling for about 7 months that sort of made me realize that I can exist on my own for periods of time. And not only that, but I can meet new people and make new friends. And it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. And I think the fact that I did that trip around the world gave me the confidence to then come and set up that office in Malaysia the first time. Although I knew I was going to be completely on my own, I thought I'll meet other people somehow. And so it won't be like spending 3 years on my own in another country. I'll just go over there and see what happens and make it work. So I think it was that trip around the world in 1994 to 1995 that enabled me to then come and live in Malaysia the first time. So if I hadn't done that, I probably never would have come to Malaysia. If that had been, the best job I'd ever had, I probably would have just stayed in London and done that job. But it turned out it wasn't really what I wanted to do, and I thought I'd take a while to figure out what I did want to do. And when I came back from that trip, I got the next job, which was the longest I've ever stayed in one company. I stayed with that company then for 12 years. And as part of that 12 years, I came to Malaysia. It sort of shook things up a bit doing that trip around the world, and it made me think of what I really want to do, and then also gave me the confidence to then be able to come and do that secondment in Malaysia. Luckily I'd been able to save up enough from my first 2 jobs that I had after university, and took that money and spent it all traveling around the world. So if I trace it back, it's probably that as a key turning point. I've been to India and Nepal, and then I went to Thailand. I came to Malaysia after Thailand, and then went to Singapore, Indonesia, and then Australia and New Zealand, and then finally went to the US and went back to the UK after I'd spent quite a bit of time in the US. Yeah, it was quite a lot of countries to cover in that time. I did a lot of trekking in the jungle, going up mountains in Nepal, doing some sort of crazy things. Like in New Zealand, I jumped out of a plane with an instructor. I continued my diving training while I was in Australia and did the rescue diver course. I also visited family. I have a cousin in Australia who I'd never met, so I went and met her for the first time. I went to stay with my aunt in New Zealand. She put me up in Wellington for about a week or something. There's only 3 words, really, which is just do it. Sometimes people will procrastinate about this sort of thing forever, never do it. If you've got the means to do it, then I would say just do it, especially if you're that sort of age. I mean, I was 26 at the time, and I turned 27 while I was on that trip. And I guess the other thing is, the thing I figured out was that you can't worry about I'm going to be on my own, because there's lots of other people doing that kind of thing, and you just meet up with them. And I spent quite long periods of time traveling with other people. Even as a fairly introverted person, I found that it wasn't that hard, and being in that situation forced you to do it anyway, come out of your shell and just chat to other people. So the same thing happened also when I came to Malaysia the first time, because I was on my own. I was the only employee in the country at the time. So I had to find friends in Malaysia, and as a result of finding a whole bunch of other people, a mix of expats and Malaysians, ended up having a better social life in Malaysia than I ever expected I would. So yeah, you're just sort of forcing yourself into that situation sometimes is the only way to do it. I'm an introverted person that has learned how to be less introverted over time. And that is probably partly because of the job, and also partly because of the situations that I've thrown myself into. If you were a real introvert and you were writing software, you'd just stay writing software. You would become a pre-sales person, because that requires you to go out, meet customers and give presentations and things that you wouldn't think an introverted person would ever want to do. But I've found actually that I'm enjoying it, and during this pandemic I've found that I've been able to do it better. I think the Zoom kind of meetings almost work better for me than the face-to-face real life ones. One of the things that I've taken both from reading books about Stoicism and also Dale Carnegie course that I did a few years ago is that they had the same kind of idea in them. I would tell myself to bear in mind this particular thing more. It's something along the lines of, don't stress about the things you can't change. Have the courage to change the things you can change, and have the wisdom to know the difference between the two. It's like, there's some things you're never going to change. You might as well just accept them the way they are and live with it. But if you can change something and you want to change it, then you have to go ahead and do that. That's the thing I would try to reinforce to myself. Work-wise, I'm focused a lot on 5G. My current job involves doing proof concepts, and we do a lot of stuff on new technologies, so 5G being the main one. I guess in a non-work way, I'm also focused on looking at my pension provisions, how I'm going to make sure I have enough for retirement, and when I'm going to be able to retire, and that kind of thing. Probably as a family, we'll have to decide at some point, are we going to stay in Malaysia forever, or are we going to move and have a go at living in the UK? I know my daughter would like to go and live in the UK, so I'm thinking, at some point when it makes sense, maybe we'll go and spend the last part of her schooling years in the UK. Because if she wants to go to university, it would actually make sense for her to have already been living in the UK for a while. But I don't think we would stay there for good after that. I think we'll probably come back. My retirement, hopefully, will be in Malaysia, which would be nice. And we might stay in KL, or we might go and live in Sarawak, but we'd have to decide that nearer the time. But that's pretty much what I'm thinking for the future. The first people I'd have to mention would be my parents. They've definitely been a source of inspiration. And the others were probably teachers and lecturers. So I had a teacher at school who, when I didn't really know what I wanted to do, he kind of encouraged me to go into engineering. And so I did. And I ended up studying engineering at university. And then I guess my main tutors for my master's and my bachelor's degrees would be the other two. Both really inspiring people that I enjoyed working with and learned a lot from them. Oh yeah, yeah. That's my pet subject. That's a fairly easy one because the only bad thing that springs to mind is having to deal with the process of being allowed to live here. And that's got more difficult actually. So when I first came here, it was employment pass, agent does it all for you. You don't really have to do anything. Then I got married, I started using a spouse visa, and then you have to do it yourself. You can't use an agent. It's just that process. It's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape. And if you want to work, there's a separate process to be able to work. So there's like a two-step process. Yeah, that's the only thing I can really think of that could probably be improved. But there are improvements actually happening. I noticed now you can do part of that process online. So you just go in and get your passport and stamp. It's getting better. It's hard to pick a favourite, but I can definitely pick two favourites. The two things I think that immediately come to mind when I think, why do I like living here and why have I stayed living here for so long, would be the people. Generally, people have been really welcoming, but the food is just the other thing. I mean, the food is just amazing. It's got to be the best place for food in the world, I think. I haven't been to every country in the world, but as far as I know, this is probably one of the best places for that as well. Okay, great, cool. How did we do? Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah.